Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Will Charlton. Welcome to another edition of Noteworthy in the NCAA, a weekly podcast here on Playback brought to you by the ETB Network that talks about the latest happenings in the landscape of college sports. And man, there is a huge thing that broke today in college football as James Franklin is no longer vacant as a head coach. He has accepted the job at Virginia Tech. So James Franklin headed to the ACC after getting fired following a 3-3 start at Penn State. James Franklin was at Penn State for, I believe, 12 seasons, and he brought a lot of success there. But after a 3-3 start this year, they fired him, bought him out for $49 million, and now he's officially going to be back coaching college football starting next year for Virginia Tech. So James Franklin is no longer on the available list of head coaches that are looking for jobs. This is a very interesting hire. I think it's great for Virginia Tech because Virginia Tech has had some national irrelevancy, if you will, since they lost Frank Beamer when he retired a handful of years ago. Virginia Tech just hasn't been the same team that they're used to having, because Virginia Tech has always been one of those teams that was like always a big competitor in the ACC under Frank Beamer. Like, Frank Beamer was obviously by the greatest coach in that school's history, but when you look at Virginia Tech since then, I mean, Brent Pry was very average. Obviously, he got fired earlier on this year when Virginia Tech was just, I mean, they're still struggling, but now they got James Franklin. It's going to be a very different story, and I think this is going to be big news for Virginia Tech, just because of the fact that James Franklin, he has been known as a coach to really kind of elevate the level of programs, and Penn State was in a very dire situation once he got hired there. He really turned that program back to being a relevant national power. And obviously, they never won the big one when he was at Penn State, I guess, if you will. But there's a handful of things that just make sense about this, because I think that, I mean, I kind of thought he was going to go to one of the SEC openings personally, but this also makes a lot of sense too. There's no deal in place yet. It's just a verbal acceptance of the job. Like, there's not a contract he signed yet. There's no money attached to it. But I still think it's so wild how you go back to the start of this year and Penn State's sitting at 3-0. They have a touchdown lead in overtime against Oregon. Oregon is facing, can't remember if it was a third down or a fourth down, and they have to score on this drive to tie the game. Like, they had a touchdown lead in overtime against Oregon at home where they could have been 4-0, and then they lost 3 straight games after that. They lost to UCLA the next week, and then Northwestern at home, and then Penn State was 3-3. And next thing you know, James Franklin is out of state college. But for Virginia Tech, I mean, like I said, they haven't really been a nationally relevant program in a handful of years now. And this is potentially going to get him back to national relevancy, because I expect James Franklin to be the master recruiter that he is, to bring out a lot of good talent to Virginia Tech. And I mean, there's a lot of like big perks around that program too, because Enter Sandman, obviously, like one of the most iconic stadium entrances in all of college football, and they have a rich history. I mean, they have a rich history there, especially with all the success they had under Frank Beamer. But yeah, I think this is big news for Virginia Tech. I still think James Franklin is a very good football coach. He just was never good enough to win the games that would put Penn State into that elite category. And granted, when the 12-team playoff started, no team benefited from it more than Penn State did, because if the 12-team playoff was going on the entire time James Franklin was at Penn State, they would have been a playoff team every single year. Because you think about the 9-3 years, the 10-2 years, where they just fell short of missing the playoffs because they couldn't beat Ohio State. They couldn't beat Michigan. They couldn't beat Michigan State the year that Michigan State went to the playoff. Like, there are a handful of things that, and they beat Ohio State the one year they did actually make it to the Big Ten championship game, but that was a team that just fell short because they had 3 losses going into the Big Ten championship game. Like they were a 9-3 team heading into the Big Ten championship game before they beat Wisconsin. So that's the only reason why they didn't make it that year. Or maybe they were a 2-loss team. It might have been a 2-loss team. Regardless, they were a two or 3-loss team when they won the Big Ten championship, and that was 2016 or 2017, I believe. Um, and so, James Franklin is going to be playing a lot lesser good competition, if you will, in the ACC than he was in the Big Ten. So I think there's a legit shot that Virginia Tech is going to be a nationally relevant program again here very soon, because this is a big, big hire for an ACC school that I think that deserves to get back to national relevancy. I mean, like when Virginia Tech is good at football, it's good for the sport, because like you love seeing Blacksburg just filled up to the brim in their stadium, and I think it's called Lane Stadium. I believe it's called Lane Stadium, but yeah, it is called Lane Stadium. And yeah, it's just it's good for the sport to see that a team like Virginia Tech's going to be getting a head coach of this caliber. I'm very excited to see how James Franklin does. Like I said, there's no deal in place yet about this, but James Franklin is certainly going to be in a good spot, and he's going into a conference where it's not going to be hard to win games. It's not. Like you get the right guys there, he's going to be able to win football games there. So I think this is a great hire for Virginia Tech. I think they are really set up nicely. And like I said, this literally just broke today. Like this broke barely even an hour ago. So this is very fresh news. Like it was talked about. This could be a thing that happens over the weekend, and here we officially are. There's just not a deal in place yet, but the deal is finalizing, and Virginia Tech is the first team this season that has their head coaching. The first power conference team that has their head coaching vacancy filled. So great news for Virginia Tech. I think this is a fantastic hire, and I'm going to be very curious to see how James Franklin does with that program in the future. But great coach heading to a program that deserves to be nationally relevant again. So it should be fun to keep an eye on that. But that's obviously the big news that we'll really kind of talk about here today. Also, some of that was released today is the new men's basketball AP poll. We'll get back to some college football news here in a little bit, but let's take a look at the new AP Top 25 poll for men's basketball, which was again released today. Here we go. I'll share my screen here so you guys can see this. 1 second. There we go. So I think some of the biggest key things that we got to note: Louisville has jumped up to the top 6. Purdue replaces Houston. Purdue back at number 1 after a very, very big road win at Alabama earlier this last week. Purdue went into Tuscaloosa and got an 87-80 win. That was a mad impressive from the Boilermakers. Matt Painter also won his 500th game as head coach for Purdue. So even though they haven't had a whole lot of success in March, I think that it's Purdue has had a lot of regular season success in the last few years. So Purdue certainly does look like the team to beat. Them in Houston last night or yesterday, I should say, because it was during the day. Houston survived against Auburn in Birmingham. That was a crazy game. 73-72 final score. Auburn missed a tip in at the buzzer that would have gave them the win. But yeah, Illinois jumps up from 14-8 after beating Texas Tech at home, set 81-77 on last Tuesday night. So big win for the Fighting Illini. My Fighting Illini, go Illini. Love what that team's doing so far. David Mirkovich is looking like one of the better freshmen in not just the Big Ten, but in the country right now. Illinois is loaded. I mean, that is an insanely deep team. I'm very excited to see what the Illini can do from here, because the Illini play Alabama on Wednesday night, neutral court at the United Center in Chicago. So that's another big time matchup for the 4-0 Illini. And Brad Underwood's guys look real good right now. I mean, this is one of the more deep teams Illinois has had in the past few years, and got 2 7-footers on the team, which is crazy. And this Euro ball that's coming to Champaign has been pretty darn cool to watch so far. Kentucky slides down to 12 after losing to Louisville. Texas Tech down to 15. And yeah, I mean, other than that, it's just Arizona's just continuing to jump up. They still obviously have that marquee win over Florida. That was 2 weeks ago now, and I do think, like, I see this comment right here on the side, Michigan above Illinois is a decision for sure. It is a decision. I don't know what Michigan has really proven so far. I mean, they hung on against a scrappy Wake Forest team this past week. Beside that, their turnovers are a big issue. I mean, what was the game that they just played where they were struggling big time? I know they ended up winning still, but yeah, it was at TCU. So, and TCU is very, very, very average. I mean, that's not a great team in the Big 12 this year. And Michigan, it was in TCU, sure, but I will say that that game was bad for Michigan. And if you just look at the box score here, like Michigan has to figure out these turnovers or else they're gonna be dire straits. Like they had 21 turnovers in the game. So, if Michigan still deals with these turnovers like they've been dealing with, it's gonna be rough sledding for Michigan this year because on paper they should be one of the top teams of the Big Ten, but if they keep dealing with those turnovers, they're not gonna win Big Ten games. Like TCU, that's one thing because TCU is not that good. But if you play like an Illinois or a Purdue, you're not going to win that game. You're going to lose. You're for sure going to lose that game. Even if you play like a Michigan State or you play like a UCLA, you're going to lose that game. So Michigan has a lot of things to figure out for a team that should be a lot better than what they've shown so far. But as we'll always do, the rest of this basketball season, let's take a look at the updated KenPom rankings heading into week number 3 of college basketball. Here we go. I'll share my screen once again, and we can take a look at these. So here we go. Duke is now the number 1 team in KenPom after, their net rating has skyrocketed after the last few weeks. It's been pretty impressive what Duke has been doing. Cameron Boozer has been playing out of his mind as a true freshman. Gonzaga has looked really good. I mean, Gonzaga steamrolled Creighton this past week in what was what was supposed to be a fun early preseason game, but Creighton just I can't remember the final score of that, but let me look up what the final score of that again was. Gonzaga beat Creighton 90-63, and then Gonzaga went on the road and beat Arizona State. Yeah, Gonzaga's looked really good so far with Graham Ike and company. They have a fun non-conference schedule coming up too, as they play Alabama, Maryland, Kentucky, UCLA, Oregon. Like Gonzaga's actually challenging themselves to get some high resume boosting wins to its name before they head into the weak conference schedule that they always have. But credit to Gonzaga for scheduling these games because it's very hard for them to it's very, very hard for them to proclaim themselves as one of the best teams of the country when you're playing like Pepperdine and Loyola Marymount and Seattle. Obviously, St. Mary's is always like a tougher team. Like they usually find themselves in the tournament, but to see Gonzaga doing what they've been doing so far this season early on, beating a Creighton like 90-63. Creighton's not a bad team. They might not be as good as they've been in years past, and I doubt they will since they don't have Ryan Kalkbrenner anymore, and they don't have Ashworth and don't have Baylor Shireman. Yeah, Creighton lost a lot of pieces, but I'm not discrediting that win. So nice win for Gonzaga. They're number 2 right now. Houston, number 3 after holding on against Auburn. Kentucky's 4 with a 3-1 record. That's just good because of how efficient their offense been. I mean, that's a great number. Purdue, I'm kind of shocked Purdue's at 5. You'd think they'd be a little higher, but again, these are all metrics. Like this is like a subjective ranking. These are objective rankings based on metrics and numbers. Illinois 6, UConn 7. UConn also beat BYU on Saturday night. That was a fun game. Really, really close game in Boston. I believe it was a 3-point final, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 86-84. UConn beat BYU. So that was a great game in Boston, and UConn's next game is against Arizona, and then UConn also plays Illinois on a neutral court on Black Friday. They play at Kansas, and then they also play Florida in Madison Square Garden in December. They play Texas as well. That game is at home before they head into Big East competition. So UConn's got a really tough non-conference the rest of the way as well. I mean, that if Illinois keeps winning, that game on Black Friday could be a top 5 matchup. It very well could be, and I honestly wouldn't doubt if it is. So that's something to keep in mind. Florida 8. Florida had a nice win against Miami yesterday. Louisville is behind Kentucky, which is interesting because Louisville kind of ran the brakes off the Wildcats, but Louisville's looking like a real contender in the ACC right now too. I mean, Pat Kelsey's got that team rolling. Iowa State's 9, and then you see the rest of the top 20 right here. And a team like Alabama down to 21, pretty interesting. So yeah, those are the updated KenPom rankings for this week. And some games you want to keep your eye on this coming week in college basketball. Obviously, Illinois is playing Alabama on Wednesday night. That's going to be a fun one. Tomorrow night, Michigan State plays Kentucky, and then Kansas plays Duke in the CBS Sports Classic. Or I'm sorry, the Champions Classic. The CBS Sports Classic happens later on. That's the Champions Classic. So Michigan State plays Kentucky, and then Kansas plays Duke. That's a doubleheader tomorrow night. So that'll be a really fun one. Fun 2 games. Like I mentioned, Wednesday night, Alabama plays Illinois. Arizona plays UConn. So 2 huge games Wednesday night that you'll want to keep your eye on for sure. Thursday night, Memphis plays Purdue. So that's actually kind of a fun matchup. Wake Forest plays Texas Tech, which is decent. Friday night, Wisconsin plays BYU. So a rematch of the round of 32 last year where BYU just barely edged out Wisconsin. That was a phenomenal game in the NCAA tournament. Last year, Wisconsin plays BYU. That game is a neutral court in Salt Lake City, so essentially a home game for BYU. And yeah, that's pretty much the main card that you want to keep your eyes on for this coming week. But Tuesday and Wednesday have the big games this week, the big doubleheaders. So definitely make sure you're watching some college basketball on Tuesday and Wednesday. And before we, the last thing we'll talk about here today, before we log off, is Tennessee dismissed a player from its roster. Tennessee football, that is. Tennessee football dismissed Boo Carter, and all of a sudden there's a big kind of buzz around like what's going on. But Boo Carter said he's an injury, even though Josh Heupel is kind of the head coach of Tennessee is denying it. So it's a very interesting situation going on right now. But he was dismissed from the Tennessee football team, and it's one of those deals that it seems like there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. Because Carter was saying that, I mean, he's already going to say he's entering the transfer portal, looking for new opportunities. But this is a very interesting situation. And Heupel is, I mean, Boo Carter was a former 4-star recruit to Tennessee. And he's saying that even though he was dismissed from the team, Boo Carter's saying personally that an injury is what's stopping his season, not that he got released from the team. So there's a lot of weird things going on with this right now. Very interesting scenario that's happening. But yeah, so Tennessee's defensive back Boo Carter has been dismissed from the team, even though he's saying that it was an injury. But Josh Heupel, he said this quote: he regretted giving Boo Carter a second chance because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he got in trouble at the start of the year, from what I understand. I'm trying to read this article right now and see what the. Yeah, I'm not exactly too sure, but Anywho, yeah, it's a really interesting situation. So Boo Carter claims that an injury is why he's leaving the team, but it's actually Josh Heupel dismissing him from the team, and Josh Heupel regrets giving a second chance and is not very happy with how things panned out with Carter. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of our Noteworthy in the NCAA. Make sure to tune in to Forever Power 5 this coming week to hear all about the college football topics from this past week, and we'll see you back here